There's a pattern that almost nobody talks about openly, but introverts seem to experience it more than anyone else. The people who are quietest, most thoughtful, most careful with their words, they tend to attract the highest number of people who are not what they appear to be. And when you look at the psychology behind it, it actually makes a lot of sense. If you're an introvert, you've probably noticed this. You're selective about who you let in. You don't have a wide social circle, but the few people you do trust, you trust deeply. And somehow, despite all that selectiveness, you've still ended up with people in your life who turned out to be completely different from who they presented themselves as. People who are performing a version of themselves around you. And when the mask eventually came off, it stung more than it probably should have, because you thought you were good at reading people. Here's the thing, you're good at reading people. That's actually part of the problem. Introverts tend to be highly observant. Research on introversion and sensory processing suggests that introverts process environmental stimuli more deeply than extroverts do. You notice things. You pick up on subtleties in conversation, in tone, in the small inconsistencies between what someone says and what they do. This makes you feel safe to be around because you actually listen. And people, especially people who are used to not being truly heard, find that magnetic. But here's where it gets complicated. The people who are drawn most intensely to that kind of deep attention are often the people who need validation the most. And a certain subset of those people aren't looking for genuine connection. They're looking for an audience, a safe one that won't push back too hard or call them out publicly, or compete with them for the spotlight. Introverts fit that profile almost perfectly. Think about it from the perspective of someone performing a persona. If you want your performance to land, you need a receptive audience. Someone who takes you seriously. Someone who won't distract from your narrative or challenge it in front of others. An introvert who listens carefully and doesn't dominate conversations is the ideal setting for someone who needs to control how they're perceived. You become, without realizing it, the perfect mirror for someone who needs constant reflection. And this isn't about you being naive. It's about the specific dynamic that your presence creates. Psychologists who study social behavior have identified what's sometimes called the warmth-competence trade-off in how people evaluate others. When someone comes across as genuinely warm and attentive, we tend to lower our threat assessment of them. We assume that depth and care equal honesty. But warmth and honesty are not the same thing. Someone can be skilled at performing warmth precisely because they understand how deeply you respond to it. There's also something worth considering about how introverts handle conflict. Most introverts have a fairly strong aversion to confrontation, not because they lack backbone, but because they process conflict differently. For an introvert, a tense exchange doesn't just end when the conversation stops. It replays. It gets analysed from multiple angles. The emotional residue lingers longer. Fake people know this, even if not consciously. They learn quickly that you're unlikely to call them out directly, that you'll absorb tension rather than escalate it, and that makes you safer to be dishonest around. The irony is that the very qualities that make introverts good friends, the loyalty, the depth, the patience, are the same qualities that make them attractive targets for people who want the benefits of a close relationship without the accountability that comes with it. Now here's something that might reframe how you think about this. The fact that fake people are drawn to you doesn't mean you're failing at something. It means you're offering something real in a world where real things are increasingly rare. You're just not yet calibrated to the specific ways that people exploit genuine connection. Most introverts aren't taught to watch for performance. You're watching for depth, and because you're looking for one thing, you sometimes miss the other. Depth and performance can look remarkably similar in the early stages of a relationship. Both involve someone telling you meaningful things about themselves. Both involve intensity. Both involve the feeling that this person gets me. The difference only becomes visible over time when the story starts to contradict itself, when the behavior doesn't match what was said, when you realize that the intimacy only ever flowed one direction. The question worth sitting with isn't why do fake people find me? It's what did I miss and when did I start ignoring it? Because introverts often know, not immediately but earlier than they admit. There's usually a moment, sometimes several moments, where something felt slightly off, where a story didn't quite add up, where a reaction seemed more performed than felt. And a lot of introverts override that signal because they've invested emotionally, because they want to believe the version of the person they've built in their head, or because confronting it means having exactly the kind of conflict they've spent their whole life trying to avoid. Learning to trust that early signal isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about understanding that your instincts are actually quite good and that the problem isn't perception. It's that you've been trained by temperament and maybe by experience to give people the benefit of the doubt past the point where the doubt is still reasonable. The introvert who learns to honor their own discomfort early, who treats that quiet internal friction as data rather than something to be managed, becomes genuinely hard to fool. Not because they close themselves off, but because they stop overriding the part of themselves that already knows. That's not cynicism. That's just a more complete version of the attentiveness you already have.